welcome parents and carers to our video all about the Year 6 SATs, which will commence in May 2022. This video aims to help you with any information you might need regarding your children's statutory attainment tests. So, what will be covered in the following video? The overview is as follows. We will consider what the SATs are, the timetable for SATs week, when and how the SATs are carried out, specific arrangements for SATs, some examples of test papers for SPAG, mathematics and reading, and how we can best support our children in preparing for their SATs. One of the questions as a parent or carer you might have is, actually, what are the SATs? The SATs stand for Statutory Key Stage 2 Standard Assessment Tests, and these are also known as SATs. They are used to evaluate your child's educational progress, and they compare their average attainment to national expectations. The SATs will test the children across several different subjects: reading, mathematics, and spelling, punctuation and grammar, which is also known as SPAG. Key Stage 2 Standard Assessment Tests will begin on the week commencing Monday the 9th of May 2022, and they will continue until Thursday the 12th of May 2022. As SATs are statutory, this means that it is compulsory that all children will complete these tests. On this slide, you can see an example timetable for how the SATs will run. As mentioned, the Key Stage 2 Standard Assessment Test will begin on Monday the 9th of May 2022, and they will continue to Thursday the 12th of May 2022. You can see there is a timetable of 4 different days. The first day, Monday the 9th of May, will begin with the SPAG papers, and your children will be very prepared for these papers, the first being a punctuation and grammar test that lasts for 45 minutes. This will consist of a range of multiple choice questions that will test your children on their punctuation and grammar knowledge. Following that, there will also be a 20-minute spelling test. On Tuesday the 10th of May 2022, the children will sit only one paper. This is their 60-minute long reading test that will consist of 3 different types of texts, where the children will have to analyse, use their comprehension and inference skills in order to answer questions. Following this, on Wednesday the 11th of May, the children will sit the first 2 of their 3 mathematics paper. Maths paper 1 will be an arithmetic paper that will last 30 minutes and will consist of mainly mathematical calculations. Then, the children will have a brain break before taking paper 2, which is a reasoning paper that will last 40 minutes long, where the children will be given more word problem questions. On Thursday the 12th of May, the children will sit their final paper, which is the 3rd and final paper 3 reasoning, which again will consist of word, reasoning and problem-solving calculations. Each test will have a time limit, and the children have practiced past papers with the same time frames in school. Writing is assessed using evidence collected by your child's class teacher throughout Year 6, so there is no Year 6 SATs writing test. A question you may be considering is when and how are the SATs carried out? The test will take place during normal school hours, under exam conditions across the Year 6 classrooms. With 90 children within the year group, the children will be timetabled in 2 groups across the morning. Children are not allowed to talk to each other from the moment the assessments are handed out until they are collected after the test has ended. These are exam protocols, and the children have practiced these an awful lot in school. Afterwards, the completed papers are sent away and they're marked externally. You may also be considering if there are any specific arrangements for SATs. Children with additional needs who have similar provision in their day-to-day learning at school may be allotted specific arrangements. These can include additional extra time, tests being opened early to be modified, an adult to read for them, an adult to scribe and write for them, written or spoken translations of the mathematic reasoning papers, and arrangements for children who are ill or injured at the time of tests. A key consideration is what sorts of results are reported and then shared with schools. Once the SATs tests are marked, they will be given the following scores. Firstly, a raw score, which is the total number of marks achieved for each paper. Secondly, a scaled score. This is explained below. And lastly, a judgment of whether the national standard has been met. After marking each test, the external markers will convert each raw score into a scaled score to show whether each child is working below, at, or above the national standard. Scaled scores change each year depending on the difficulty experienced nationally of the papers that year. When the scaled score is given, it is given in a range from 80 up to 120. A scaled score of 100 or more is meeting the national standard. There are no separate tests for higher achieving pupils. However, a scaled score of 110 to 120 would show that a child is working above the national standard, and this is known as working at greater depth. Let's take a closer look at the grammar, punctuation and spelling tests, which will consist of 2 papers taking place on Monday the 9th of May 2022. Paper 1 is the longer paper, which lasts for 45 minutes, where children will be tested on grammar and punctuation and spelling focused on the following areas. Number 1, grammatical terms or word classes, functions of sentences, combining words, phrases and clauses, verb forms, tenses and consistency, punctuation, vocabulary, and lastly, standard English and formality, all of which have been covered and revised during their time at school. Paper 2 is a shorter paper which lasts 15 minutes. Children here will be tested on their spelling only. They are asked to fill in a blank within a sentence, attempting to spell out the spelling word in context correctly. Here are some examples of the types of questions the children might come across in their grammar, punctuation and spelling test, Paper 1. They might be given questions where they need to tick the sentence that ends with a question mark, or they need to circle something that's written in standard English. They may also need to draw a line to match things up, for example, synonyms or antonyms. It's really important at this point that the children strive for accuracy and they tick the quantity that they need, or they circle or underline where necessary in order to gather as many marks as they possibly can. There is also an example of a spelling Paper 2 example question. For example, question 18, the grey clouds looked blank in the sky. They would need to write in the spelling for how the grey clouds looked. Or 19, Omar put the cutlery back in the blank. They would have to spell the word draw accurately here. The children will be given 4 opportunities to hear the spelling that they need to spell. Now let's have a look at the reading paper. The Year 6 Reading SATs paper will be sat on Tuesday the 10th of May 2022. The assessment has been designed to measure whether children's comprehension of age-appropriate reading material meets the national standard. It is a standard timing of 60 minutes and it includes reading the text and answering questions. There are 3 different set texts for the children to read, and these could be any combination of non-fiction, fiction and/or poetry. The reading paper focuses on the following areas known as content domains. Explain the meaning of words in a context. Retrieve and record information or identify key details from fiction and non-fiction. They might be asked to summarise main ideas from more than one paragraph. They may also need to make inferences from the text, explain or justify inferences with evidence from the text. Children might need to predict what could happen from the details stated and implied, or identify and explain how information or content is related to and contributes to meaning as a whole. The children might also need to identify and explain how meaning is enhanced through the choice of words and phrases, or they could even need to make comparisons within the text. The Year 6 Reading SATs paper requires a range of answering styles. This includes responding to multiple choice questions, one-word answers, and multiple mark questions which require more formal paragraph-length answers. The children will be very used to the style of questions from reading papers from our practice of them in school. They know exactly what they need to do. Again, here is an example for the reading paper. This is the style of question the children may be given. Based on what you have read, what does the last paragraph suggest might happen to the explorers next? Use evidence from this paragraph to support your prediction. Children will be expected to use their understanding of PEEL, point, evidence, explain, language, in order to gather 2 marks for this question. They'll need to expand on their response. Here is some further information about the SATs reading test. Since the current testing format for the Year 6 SATs began in 2016, there has been a tendency for the number of marks to go in favour towards 3 particular types of content domain or questions. For example, in 2019, 20% of marks could be gained by answering questions where children had to give or explain the meaning of words in a context. Over a quarter of the marks could be gained by answering questions where children had to retrieve or record information or details from a text. Almost half of the marks were allotted to questions requiring children to make inferences from a text and justify their inferences with evidence. So, when reading with your child at home, try answering questions like, find a word in this paragraph that is closest in meaning to, and then provide a word, for example, annoyed. Or, in what year did, provide a fact, for example, the French authorities make it illegal for people to swim from France to England. Or, in the last paragraph, X does not want to Y. Give 2 reasons why X does not want to Y, so that we're asking the children the similar types of questions they will be asked within the reading paper. Now let's take a look at the maths papers. Paper 1, the arithmetic paper, will take place on Wednesday the 11th of May 2022. It has a standard timing of 30 minutes and it's worth a total of 40 marks. It covers the 4 operations: division, multiplication, addition, subtraction, as well as mixed operation calculations requiring BODMAS. Also, there may be questions on number properties, calculating percentages of amounts, calculating with decimals, and also calculations using fractions. Below are some example arithmetic questions. You'll notice there are differing marks. This depends on how much the children are required to do in the calculation. It is important that for some questions they show their method, as this might mean they get 1 out of 2 marks, even if the answer is not quite correct. Maths papers 2 and 3 are reasoning papers. These papers will be taking place on Wednesday the 11th of May 2022 and Thursday the 12th of May 2022. Both papers have standard timings of 40 minutes and are worth 35 marks each. Paper 2 and 3 require children to demonstrate their mathematical knowledge and skills, as well as their ability to solve problems and mathematical reasoning. Questions focus on the following mathematical topic areas: number place value, including Roman numerals, addition, subtraction, multiplication and division, geometry, properties of shapes and position and direction, statistics, measurement, which includes length, perimeter, mass, volume, time and money, algebra, ratio and proportion, fractions, decimals and percentages. The questions in this paper get harder throughout the paper. Now let's take a look at some example questions. You'll see with these questions again, there are a variety of different marks available. It's really important that the children read carefully what's written in bold and they underline the key information, as that will help them to interpret what the question is asking them. So finally, how can we further support our children in preparing for their SATs in May? Firstly, we know our children will do their very best, and we will be supporting and championing each of them with all the encouragement to enable them to succeed. Some further tips: direct any questions or concerns you have about SATs to us. Encourage your child with their practice papers and booster homework, as this will enable the children to grow in confidence with the types of questions and familiar formats they will have during their SATs. Continue home reading and asking your child focused questions, language, retrieval, evidence, on what they have read. Continue to use online school platforms like TT Rockstars, Education City, Accelerated Reader in order to support the children. And finally, thank you very much for listening. If there are any questions, please do not hesitate to get in touch via our Year 6 email. Thank you.